Welcome back, Planeswalkers, to another episode of The Hive Mind. My name is John. This is the show where I traverse the multiverse in search of other prominent members of the Magic the Gathering community. And before I introduce today's member of the Magic the Gathering community, I want to talk a little bit about Cardsphere.com. That's right. If you have paper Magic cards that you want to trade, buy, sell online, go to Cardsphere.com. It's kind of the best place to go. And I even think my guest might probably agree with me, but more on that later. You could also go and they have the best swag in town. If you haven't seen their cool little like California, almost looks like a Vice City type of logo on their new shirts and hats and all that. You can check those out at txcp.store. So without further ado, talk about a prominent member of the Magic the Gathering community. Planeswalking in from Bloomington, Illinois, I have Mr. Jeff Hoagland. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Happy to be here.
Did I say it correctly?
You did. You hit it. You hit it out of the park.
Oh, geez. All right. Thank God. All right, sir. This is awesome. You are a fellow member of the Cardsphere family, so that's nice.
I am. Yeah, they've been sponsoring my stream for probably close to 6 months now.
Yeah, good guys over there. And I've been wanting to have you on for a while. I've probably been following you since 2011. But I know you've been in the game a lot longer than that. Let's talk about that. Let's start off with your Magic origin story.
So initially, I played Magic very, very casually for a long time. So my cousin and I were gifted a box of leftover Magic cards from one of his neighbors when he was moving, when we were like 11, 12 years old. And we taught ourselves how to play using a 6th edition rule book. And just for a long time, probably close to almost a decade, we just played very casually, like drafts and basements and stuff like that.
Awesome. Did you kind of go the route that a lot of people do when you just kind of have a stack of cards, you just kind of segregate it by colors, be like, I'm the green deck today, you could be the blue deck?
Yeah, and I remember we had starter decks and stuff like that we went and picked up. We had Thorn Elementals that came with that Magic CD that had the how to play thing that you put into your computer.
Oh yeah, that's old school, man.
Yeah, just a lot of that. I actually didn't have my my DCI number probably close to a decade until after I had started playing.
What was your first term? You said you started kind of with drafts as far as competitive goes?
So we played a lot of limited casually, so we would always just like buy a box or two when the set came out and we draft in each other's basements. My first dip into playing any type of sanctioned Magic was just FNM like most people. I had a deck that was really good with our casual group. So we went to a Friday Night Magic tournament. I believe it was right after like Mirrored and Besiege release. And that's when I started kind of playing sanctioned Magic for the first time.
Awesome. What was your kind of favorite? Did you like the standard format of that time, or were you more into like drafts as far as the FNM realm goes?
As far as all of that goes initially, it's kind of like that big weird world, right? When you dive in and you like have no idea what's good, what's bad. Like I remember my opponent played a Jace the Mind Sculptor and I picked this card up. Like, this card has so much text on it. It was just like, we never had any of those. Our expensive cards got sold because you could buy a lot more cheaper cards with what that expensive one was. We had no idea why you'd want to pay that much money for a Magic card.
Well, sure. I mean, at least you didn't start, in like revised Dome. Well, I started a little bit after that, but I still was like of the time where I was opening like real dual lands and still trading them off for like Corral Worms and stuff like that, because you just don't know. And especially when you're a kid and you're starting with Magic, you're just like, I don't want to land as my rare.
Yep. Yeah, and then so my transition into playing Magic competitively, like I did very heavily for a long time, started. I was finishing in my last semester of grad school, and it was after an FNM one night, and one of my buddies was like, "Hey, there's this Magic tournament down near St. Louis tomorrow, and we're gonna get in the car and go." And I was like, I talked to my then fiance at the time. I was like, "We're gonna go to this thing this week," and she goes, "All right, sure." So we like drove down there, and I remember I went 1, 3, and 2 at that open. Was at the Collinsville Convention Center, and I had a blast. I was hooked. I won one match of Magic. I was like, I'm going to do better next time.
Do you remember any of those, like, maybe you didn't know at the time, but like sitting down with what would be like pros and what turns out to be your peers? I mean, I consider you kind of upper echelon as far as the players go, but do you remember sitting down across from any of those kind of big names back in the day?
Honestly, I don't recall the specifics of many of the matches, but even if I had been playing against players who were named players at the time, I wouldn't have known who they were, I don't think.
Sure, sure. And so what, did that just kind of F&M's just kind of turned into kind of higher stake tournaments, and what kind of brought you down? What kind of sparked you on that higher level competitive
It's
play?
that first big hit always gets you when you're a gambler, right? So I remember
Sure.
I went to the first tournament and we scrubbed out very hard, and there was another one a couple months later in Des Moines, Iowa. And normally I wouldn't dream of like driving that far to go to a Magic tournament at this point in my life. But one of my wife's girlfriends from high school lived there. So she's like, oh, let's go visit my girlfriend. You can play Magic tournament. And I spiked the open and top aided my second open with the same crappy control deck that I scrubbed the previous one with. I was like, oh, this is sweet. I can do this.
So at that point, you're just like, I can not only do this, but I might be able to make a living out of this.
So I'm always someone who's pretty realistic and like open about like the finances of being a professional Magic player, right? So the amount of money you make traveling to play Magic the Gathering tournaments doesn't really derive an income, so to speak, especially in the United States where you have the average income is higher. While I loved my time that I spent traveling, to play Magic tournaments, I think between 2014, 2015, 2016, I was traveling like, gosh, probably close to 100 weekends in those 3 years. I mostly just broke even on actual tournament money, which I considered a win for myself because I got to drive around the country with my buddies. We flew a bunch of the times too. We played a bunch of Magic tournaments, and it didn't cost us any money to play our hobby.
Nice. Yeah, that's always living the dream, right? Is a hobby that kind of self-funds itself.
Yep. And I worked a full-time job pretty much all of those years when I was doing that. In fact, I remember a Kansas City Open one time. There was a blizzard and a 6-hour drive turned into a 12.5-hour drive. And we like staggered in the door at like 6:30 a.m., took a nap, and like went to work at 8. It was just like, all right, yeah, that was a rough weekend.
Oh yeah. The life of the Magic grinder on the road. For sure. So you said you don't remember any of those kind of early people or opponents that you might have played against, but did you have any like early influences as far as like maybe deck building goes or articles or anything like that?
I remember when I first started playing during the New Phyrexia and then Innistrad, and the first time we went back to Ravnica, Patrick Chapin was playing a lot then and making a lot of content. He I believe around that time is really where he picked up that nickname, the Innovator. So I remember looking at a lot of his stuff and reading it pretty regularly.
Sure. Were you as big a fan of fried chicken as he is?
I am actually a vegetarian, so not quite.
So okay. So we don't share that with Chapin at least. Yeah, I remember that time, man, because that's the I came back to the game around Innistrad, M13, Return to Ravnica. That's such an ongoing theme of this show, talking about that. In my opinion, that was perfect Magic. But I do think that we are kind of getting back there with, I kind of like, we're going back to Ravnica for Guilds of Ravnica, but then I got to pre-release it. I've been playing it. It's a fantastic set.
This standard format is the best Magic format I've played in a long time, and it's still early. I'm very conservative when I make a strong statement, but it's definitely in contention for maybe the best Magic format I've ever played.
Yeah. Did you have a lot of game as far as playing in that original Return? I always say Return, not Ravnica, but the Return to Ravnica block, that standard. Did you enjoy that format as much as most people?
Yeah, I loved that format. That format is actually where I really got like hooked on playing more tournaments. I think it was it was actually the weekend before my wedding. I went to an open weekend and I top aided both opens in the same weekend. And it was just like that was the real push over the let's do this a bunch.
Sure, absolutely. And I remember at the time, a lot of people were complaining about, because like I remember like Junk, it was called Junk Reanimators before it was Abzan, with Thragtusk and Resto Angels, that kind of ruled the roost. But there was always something that kept it in check too. You had Naya Blitz, you had Esper Control, which I was a huge fan of. I feel like it was more of a rock, paper, scissors than people complained about.
That constructed format, that standard format, was actually the standard deck out of any constructed deck that I had my highest match win rate with at competitive REL. I was just shy of 80% in almost 100 sanctioned matches with Temur Flash.
Oh wow.
You remember that deck? That deck was
Yeah.
Yevas, Wolfear Avengers, Snapcasters. That was my jam.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it is. Like you were doing that. I remember Melissa Del Toro at the time was doing the I forgot what it was like Thrag Wolf Run or something like that,
Yep.
which was just incredible.
Yep.
Where she would just win on a big Thrag Tusk on a Wolf Run. It was perfect. Like it was such a rock paper scissors. It had something for everyone's play style. Would you say that right now? And like you said, it is early, so I'm not going to hold you to such a high praise. But do you think that we're kind of getting there?
Yeah, I think the really thing that sets apart this format as potentially being a very good format is the threat answer balance has kind of been pulled back in tow. There aren't scrap heap scroungers, there aren't hazards, there aren't scarab gods like terrorizing this format. And like while there are good threats like Carnage Tyrant, there's a variety of answers to those threats in a variety of colors.
Sure. It does feel like there was a little bit stronger as far as answer goes back then. Like you had Bonfire back then, you had Supreme Verdict. As far as like that kind of stuff goes, I feel like that's the only thing that might be a little bit lacking as far as the comparison.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, and you want to know how powerful those answers are, right? Like, look how many modern staples came out of that standard format, right? Like, that's how you know that we were playing with some strong cards.
Yeah, like when Tension Sphere is one of the weaker cards, that's pretty strong.
Yep.
Oh man. So going back into like just your style and everything, do you enjoy the kind of discovery and finding a deck and brewing and doing that, or do you enjoy more kind of justifying it with playing it and winning? Obviously everyone enjoys winning Magic, especially if you're doing it, for monetary gain or whatever. But do you love the deck building process, or do you like playing more?
Honestly, they're both great in different ways, right? So Magic pulls me in as someone with a very mathematics focused brain, as games and building decks are both puzzles to be solved, right? And they're very complicated puzzles. They're not puzzles that we can plug into a computer and have them break down and analyze for us. They're series of percentage plays based on intuition and experience that you get better at making the more you play.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, you went from kind of building those decks and playing those kind of fringe decks and putting them in the spotlight. I mean, if you think of a Jeff Hoagland deck, and at least for me, I think a Kiki Cord. Kiki Cord is, I feel like that's the Jeff Hoagland signature deck. I've lost to it a bunch. I've won with it too. It's not one of the ones that I usually play at like a modern FNM, but man, it does it especially, after Twin kind of went away. Are you still as proud of that deck as you were when you made it?
The one thing I would like to put an asterisk next to is I don't like to take credit for, making an archetype per se. It's not really innovative to like put Kiki and Resto together and then like put the only green tutor we haven't banned out of the format in with him. But I do think that I am proud of the amount of tuning work that I did with that deck. And honestly, it wasn't even just tuning that went into that deck, but just the play skill that went into it as well, because that deck was never great, but it was a deck that rewarded you for knowing what was going on and was very good at punishing people who didn't know what was going on. And let's be honest, it was hard to know what was going to come out of the Kiki Cord deck.
Sure. And that's the thing that was kind of great about it, because it was, I believe, and this is just quoting you, I was watching one of your SEG spotlights. While this, the deck had a lot of game in Eldrazi Winter at the time, I think you said that it's a mid-range that can combo off. So it did have, you have to sing its praises because it held its own against the Boogeyman.
So we've seen this deck from you before, obviously. 3 top 8s, as we mentioned.
I think that's the most important thing when you're playing the Kiki deck, is to recognize that you're a mid-range creature deck that can combo, not a combo deck that can mid-range.
And honestly, I remember that tournament that I top-8'd during that time period in Modern with Kiki Cord. I think if I had been playing both sides of the table, I definitely wouldn't have top-8'd that tournament in a lot of those matches. The thing that deck did that allowed me to leverage in terms of my play skill really well is that deck was a deck that created big boards in matchups like that. And there's a lot of players that kind of crack or just like shut down when there's a lot of things in play, and being able to like do that combat math very quickly and like look at the board and go, okay, if I attack here, they're going to trade there. And like you gain those little edges from doing that repeatedly as the board changes every turn.
Sure. Absolutely. You've had tremendous success as far as, you know, first places, top 8s, top 16s.
Actually, just a small. I
Sure.
might currently hold the title of most open top 8s without a win.
Look at you. Jeez.
I don't have most open top 8s in general, but I actually haven't won one of them.
Okay. Well, I mean, still, your name was always in the headlines, or always at the top of the standings. What was your fondest memory of those paper grinding tournaments, especially that SEG series?
I honestly, it's probably one of my earliest set of tournaments. There was one point where I top 8'd 3 opens in a row, and then the 2 opens following, I lost 3 win-and-ins the weekend after that. And that was when I was playing Temur Flash, just running hotter than the sun and playing well. And it's got to be a mix of those things, right, to do well at tournaments. You know, Magic's a game where even the best players are only winning, 60-65% of their matches.
Sure, absolutely. And I know you're a very competitive mind, but do you ever take that kind of brewer skill set to a more, kind of back to your roots as a more casual formats like Commander?
So I don't really touch on formats like Commander per se, but actually it's funny. My buddy Matt and I, who used to travel with me, we would always joke that Modern was popular because it's competitive Commander. Just like the way the format ends up being, it's just like this format where you can kind of play these weird combinations of cards, and even if your deck's not great, it's probably going to have enough good matchups against some things that if you hit a good set of pairings, you're going to do well with it. So it's the kind of thing where you can kind of pull in those weird ideas and still see some success with them.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about kind of going into writing columns and writing articles. How did you start in that? And I know you did a couple for SEG's main site, and then since you've moved on to Cool Stuff Inc., how is that going from that first process? Like, were you just like, hey, I'm really good at this thing, I could probably write about it, or were you kind of approached about it?
My best advice, people ask this all the time, how do you get started making content? And the answer is always just do it. I remember my first couple of things that I wrote were just self-posts on Reddit. I was writing these tournament reports, and after I'd written a tournament report or two from being successful, I started to learn, well, these are the questions people are going to ask after this tournament report. So I just started formatting those into basically article form. And so when people ask the questions I knew they were going to ask, to be like, hey, click this link, and it's already there. And then eventually, gosh, I can't even remember what the first site I wrote for. I wrote for a small site called The Meadery for a while, and there was MTG Card Market, and then I wrote a couple of one-offs for Star City here and there because the smaller sites don't always pay a ton. And like if it's a really big article, Star City would pay me a little bit more than them, so I'd do a one-off there. But eventually, if you're good at what you do and you just do it, someone's going to approach you and pick it up. Or the inverse too. Once you have like a little bit of resume, you can go to these sites and be like, hey, this is what I've done. Would you like to pay me to do this regularly for you?
Sure. And someone that has been lucky enough to do both, as far as streaming and article writing as well. I know it requires 2 different sets of skills. Do you enjoy article writing still?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny, if you would have told me during undergrad that I was going to be, churning out 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 words per week, and that was going to be, more of my income than my math background, I'd been like, nah, you crazy. But I'm glad that I paid attention in those classes and get to put those skills to use now.
Sure. They're super analytical. Your articles are always just like very precise, very, very surgical almost, but also pretty entertaining. It's very, it's not just like kind of sitting in a lecture room. You make it very welcoming and inviting. So I think you're very underrated as far as someone that writes articles.
Thank you. And one of the reasons why I think my articles are good consistently is because, while I do loosely have a contract to write every week, I take weeks off when I don't have something to say. Like, I've definitely, I'm not going to say any names here, but like I've read articles on larger sites before where like you're reading through it and you go, they didn't really have a topic this week, but they had a deadline. And whenever I hit a spot like that, I'm always like, I've just sent my editor message like, I don't really have anything to say this week. I don't want to give you something that's crap. Let's just take a week off.
Sure, absolutely. How's been the transition and calling kind of Cool Stuff Inc. your new home?
So actually, and this is something people may or may not know, so Gathering Magic was a site I was writing for before Cool Stuff Inc., but the paycheck small and Gathering Magic always came from Cool Stuff Inc. They had a separate site just for content. So I've been with them for a little while now, actually just over a year. So they're good folks, and I like writing for their stuff.
Awesome. So what made you kind of scale back competitive paper Magic events and go more towards your own content creation on your own channel as far as streaming, and how's that experience been? And again, is that something that you miss as far as paper competitive goes?
So my original scale back from playing paper Magic was because at the end of 2016, after I just like narrowly lost the Player of the Year race to Tom Ross, I was feeling a little bit burnt out. And honestly, part of the reason why I likely lost that, my last few tournaments weren't very good, was because I was feeling burnt out that last 6 weeks to a month. I remember, I think at one point in 2016, I think I had like 8 weekends or 9 weekends in a row where I was just like at an event every single weekend. And as someone who tries to was taking it very seriously, the thing people always, I tell people was, in addition to traveling on the weekend, I spent a lot of time preparing too. So, even when I wasn't streaming 30, 40 hours a week like I am now, I was still playing Magic 30, 40 hours a week then, so I could be ready for the events on the weekend. So the missing Player of the Year might actually be one of the better things that ever happened to me. It encouraged me to like kind of take a step back a little bit and then kind of focus on my content a little bit more. I've actually been streaming for a very long time. I think I've been a Twitch partner for going on 4 years now. And that's just something that just kind of built up slowly. It was always, I'm playing some Magic online anyways. Let's just fire up the webcam anyways. And then at the start of last year, and I think in large part because WotC hired Paul Cheon, there was kind of like this void in constructed Magic content on Twitch, and my numbers started getting better. And I remember I said to my wife, I was like, these numbers are going up and we're getting more subscribers. I want to put more time into this. And then it just kind of exploded from there. I remember like in February, we hired a sitter so things could become even more professional. So I wasn't streaming with the kids playing in the background anymore, making noise. And then in April this year, we actually put them in full-time daycare. So just, it was a job and we wanted to treat it like a job, give it the time that it deserved.
Did you ever think you were going to be able to just be a full-time content creator?
No. Nope, that was never the goal. It was actually, it was always an idea on my mind that something I was going to attempt when my youngest went to kindergarten, because we had never wanted, one of the reasons I'd actually quit a full-time analyst job when my oldest was born to stay home with the kids. But then this was kind of popping up and I was like, well, I really love doing this. So I think this is worth taking that leap into. And I'm really glad that I did.
Absolutely. Yeah, believe me, Jeff, I am living that life. I have 4 of my own, and I'm surprised you can't hear any in the background tonight. But, such is being a full-time father and a content creator in this day and age.
Yep.
Oh, man. All right. So let's kind of scale it back a little bit outside the cards and get a little personal now. So I think it's safe to say you're a very outspoken member of the Magic community. Some would say polarizing.
Polarizing is a great descriptor.
Absolutely, right? To me, you have a clear message, and that's give respect, get respect. Why do you think that is kind of so hard, and why do you think that like rubs people the wrong way?
Well, I think there's two people. There's two types of people that dislike me in general. One are the people who kind of have their feelings founded in some truth, and that is that when I was very early in making content, especially grinding and spending a lot of time and like working a lot of hours in the week, I definitely had a number of moments where I was very short with people in my interactions and less than stellar and professional. And the internet does not forget. And I think that, while humans can grow and change, and I think that I have been able to grow and change, I definitely think that I did some stuff and reacted to some people in ways that were negative, and that's kind of blown back on me even, 4 and 5 years later. The other type of people who don't care for the way I present myself and manage myself, those are people I'm never going to reach and I'm not trying to reach. There are people who think that every part of the internet is part of their freedom of speech, and any type of moderation of any sort, it just like rubs them the wrong way, and they think they should be able to say whatever they want wherever they want. And my channels and spaces really aren't for that.
Sure.
I think I'm very much, there's a time and a place for everything, and my channels aren't that place all the time.
I think I'm reading between the lines as far as the toxicity goes. And of course, Voldemort doesn't need to be given a name. And we won't, because, the more you mention some idiot like that, the more power you give someone like that. So, like I said, I always found your mannerisms very kind of like, well, yeah, it's just like, don't be, for lack of a better term, don't be a dick and you won't be treated like one.
Yep. And part of it too is I think some people that have a cold shoulder towards me too, it's tough to both be able to interact with the number of people that I'm able to interact with and still not be like short, direct, and to the point. And sometimes that directness, especially when it's being transmitted via text, people assume tone that wasn't intended.
Sure.
People read messages and put tone behind them that they want.
It sounds stupid, but I like to convey a lot of what I'm saying with GIFs, because and Twitter's a great place for that. And like I said, I know it's kind of dumb, but it's just easier to convey tone with a face, right? It's very hard. You could come off very short, callous, cold, or you could come off and people don't take you seriously when you are being serious. So I mean, it's a constant tightrope walk being in the kind of public domain with social media. With now there's social media platforms for everything. You have your Reddits, your Twitters, your Discords, all this stuff. So it's almost near impossible to not offend someone at this point.
Well, I don't even think it's just necessarily about being offended, because I think there's some people that think, well, I can't say anything, so I'm always going to offend somebody. When in reality, like if you're being pretty reasonable, you're not gonna upset other people who are reasonable as well.
Sure, and I'll retract that a little bit. Just, I mean, as far as maybe not offend people, but just be taking out of context sometimes.
Yep.
That's always tough.
It's funny when I say things on stream a lot of the time, I'll often put in there, and this is my subjective personal opinion, which is redundant, right? Because my opinion is obviously subjective, but I can't tell you the number of times where like I respond to a text post with like, well, in my opinion, someone responds with, well, that's subjective. I'm just like, well, of course it's subjective. I just told you it's my opinion. And it's just like, yeah. Honestly, I think one of the things that helped me grow as a person and a content creator is mute and block functions are great. There's that XKCD comic out there that I'm sure most of us have seen, where it's Honey come to bed and he's like, no, someone on the internet is wrong. And like, I've definitely been that person before, where it's just like being right was most important and responding to everybody who was wrong was important. And life's too short and not everybody's worth responding to. And sometimes you just gotta shrug and roll on off.
I totally agree. Sometimes the kind of the hate speech and just the idiots, out there kind of say things. And, I'm not at a point where like, I'm not like on your level or like a professor's level, but I am starting to kind of garner my fair share of trolls. I have a bad habit sometimes of jumping in and kind of, I have a little mean streak in me, and it's kind of fun to tussle with them once in a while. But I'm sure on once you get to kind of your platform, sometimes it's just easier to shut it off.
Yeah, and it's not even about things as hostile as like even, like big social issues like hate speech. Sometimes it's just like, man, this person really doesn't get this thing that's fundamental to Magic the Gathering. And I could probably write them 4 paragraphs and link them an article or 2, and we're going to be at the same spot. And sometimes just like to say, you know what, I think we're not going to meet where we need to meet, and have a good one.
Like lately, I've been seeing a lot of just a lot of the, I guess, the consumers of content telling content creators, just shut up about your political views or shut up about your personal views. Just talk about Magic. I think that's very disrespectful.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm creating a space on the internet, and if people don't want to be a part of my space, they're welcome to go to one of the many other spaces on the internet, right? In fact, one of the things that always makes me chuckle is, and these are things we time out in my channel very quickly, is when people come in and they let me know they don't like something, whether or not it's me or like someone else's stream. They'll be like, oh, I just came from such and such a stream and they're so terrible. It's like, why did you feel the need to come into here and like take a dump on somebody else? 1, sure. Why would I care? 2, why would you share that with other people? Like, can't you just like if it's not for you, their free content is free. Just move along.
Yeah, it is kind of hilarious sometimes. I've had people jump in live streams of mine just like, "Hey, you look stupid," or "Hey, your shirt's dumb." I'm like, "You got there, man. Cool." I hope that doing that alleviated some stress out of your day. I'm glad I could be there for you.
I love to drown them in kindness these days is one of my favorites. And one of my favorite messages to respond back when someone says something hateful, I always respond with, I hope whatever is so terrible in your life that makes you lash out at people you've never met on the internet improves.
Yeah.
Just like
that's pretty much it, man. So the past couple days, I mean, as another A-bomb kind of dropped in the community, and something happened. And then you even said, I guess we don't have to go into details, but there was another, I guess you could call him prominent member in the community, and very serious allegations against him. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just another, every time that I feel like we get over something, it's something else, and it's just so deflating. And it's not just the Magic community, because I do a lot of stuff in the movie industry as well. And it's, you find out, for every good guy or good gal out there, there's other Kevin Spaceys and Louis C.K.'s. I mean, does this kind of stuff just start to wear you down after a while?
At a certain point, I have to just be like, I can only worry about me and the people I interact with. And I just, make sure that those people in my interactions are treating others with respect and decency. And that's as far as I can go. I don't have control over everybody else, especially outside of my spaces. And I don't try to, right? Like that's a losing effort, and not one that I really want to dive into.
Yeah. And that's 100% fair. But, I'm sure you have, at least maybe if you haven't personally, but some other, community members have had personal contacts or, whatever with people that they come out to be kind of scummy. And it's almost like you never know who you could trust. And it almost scares you to collaborate now.
Yeah. I always, if anybody has anything terrible to say about me, it's going to be because I'm obnoxious or because they don't like how I moderate my channels. And I think at the end of the day, if those are my negative qualities, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at as a person.
And lately, you tweeted out that you actually banned a paid Discord member from your chat for making light of those allegations. First of all, as a parent, especially a parent of daughters, just, hey, thank you for taking that kind of shit seriously.
Yeah, and being a parent definitely changes your persona on things like that, I feel. And just like, a lot of times it's just like, what if this was one of my kids? What if this was one of my kids' friends? And just like, that's just like, how would I want them treated? How do I want my wife to be treated,
Absolutely. It terrifies me to even have my, son, even though he's a little bit older, even go and play Fortnite nowadays. Like the internet is such a vastly scary thing, and just people are so toxic, but you also don't want to shelter them either. So I don't know what the right answer is.
Yeah, it's tough. So actually one of the things that I've tried to change a little bit on my stream as the audience has grown is I've worked on scaling back my swearing on stream, because I kind of grew up and we always swear kind of casually. And myself, my friends, we swear occasionally in front of my kids. And honestly, I don't think that's a big deal, but I know other people do. And I think, my kids should know what those words are, because they're going to hear them out in the world, right? Like, I think it's really awkward when like you see parents at a restaurant and like somebody swears in the restaurant. They're like, why is that? And everybody's like, oh, it makes a big deal out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's even with content creation, I'm kind of in my own little space. My kids are away, but I know that like if you know who like Rhino is, Young Mage, like he's constantly in my streams, and it always makes me go back into dad mode, and I'm always have to just kind of scale it back a little bit, because you never know. We are talking about Magic the Gathering, and even though we're a bunch of kind of old salty dogs, there are kids that are just starting, or young adults that are being influenced. And
it's not even just the people that are actually watching the stream that might care, but like I have a number of people that like there are people in our age group who have kids who are like, they want to have my stream on while their kids are in the room.
Sure.
And if I'm being vulgar, even though I might think it's okay. Like if I'm shutting those people out of my potential audience for basically no gain, like that just doesn't make sense. So it's just a good thing to make an adjustment for.
Absolutely. Before we get to our game that we're going to play, what is your message to your detractors? Because they're all watching right now.
My number one message would definitely be, have you actually watched my content? Have you actually engaged with me? Or have you read someone else's opinion or heard someone else's opinion and then formed yours based on secondhand information? Because I've definitely, engaged with people before and they've been like, oh, I've never actually talked to you before. Like I came up to you at an event for the first time and you were actually really nice. And I shouldn't have believed those things that I read on the internet from people who were upset. And I was just like, well, that's just, how it goes. The rumor mill translates and mutates much faster in 2018 with the amount of information we have.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so much access to everything now, and especially ourselves. And we're putting it out there as brands, and we have channels and whatever and sponsors. It's our job to kind of market ourselves and putting ourselves out there. But it's that double-edged sword that you're going to get that visceral, that horrible kind of toxic reaction back at you.
I think actually one of my favorite interactions that I've had with a number of people that's actually, I think, won me over a number of people that previously claimed they didn't care for me or my stuff was, I would read a message and they'd say, I don't like Hoagland because he always does this. And regardless of what this was, I would respond to the message like, hey, literally everything I stream is on YouTube. If I'm actually always doing that, can you show me some examples of it so I can improve that? Because that thing sounds bad. And basically every time they'll come back and be like, well, I guess you don't actually do that. And that was something I heard. And I watched some of your videos. I'm just like, yeah, I know. That's what I thought.
that there is something to be said too of, I have another show that we do, and my co-host on that show posted the thumbnail that we were going to put on Reddit. I swear this is relevant. And someone very rudely said, this is not, I would never watch this show because it doesn't look like it's geared towards adults. And it, in very flavorful language though, like horrible, the worst trolling ever. And, my co-host is like, well, screw that guy. We're going to do what you want. I said, hold on. There is something to that, though. If this isn't, yes, it's not reaching this one guy. I don't want him watching anyways. But maybe maybe there is something to be said about that, and it made me think about it. The moral of the story is there always is. If you are 100% closed off to criticism and change, then you're just as bad as the detractors, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's why, my motto on my stream has definitely become, be constructive, be specific. And the specific is really, really the important part, because you can't fix what you don't know is broken. And if everybody's just telling you it's broken behind your back, how are you supposed to fix it?
Sure. And if everyone just tells you you're awesome all the time, that doesn't help out either.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, sir. Are you ready to play Face the D20?
Okay, I've got an actual D20. You told me to grab a spin down, but I've dipped into my wife's D&D box and found one that is randomized.
Oh, very nice, very nice. So what, for anyone that hasn't, I think this is like episode 49 of the Hive Mind. So if anyone is watching the show, you probably know what Face of the D20 is by now. But for anyone tuning in for the very first time, Face of the D20, basically, Jeff is going to be rolling the D20. Every number on the dice signifies a non-Magic the Gathering related question to get to know Jeff a little bit more behind the cards. So whenever you're ready, sir, go ahead and roll, and I'll ask you the question.
12.
Lucky number 12. MCU or Star Wars?
I don't know what MCU is.
The Marvel, all the like Avengers and
definitely that one. I'm not big on the space genre as a whole, but I'm definitely super into all of I love all the live action superhero stuff we've had come out recently.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was heartbroken when they said that they're canceling Luke Cage and Iron Fist. That's a whole different type of show, but yeah, it's just they're ending those, and I was very sad about that. So all right, MCU, my man, let's roll one more time, or a couple more times.
Number one.
Number one. What is your guilty pleasure?
What is my guilty pleasure? So I mentioned earlier that I'm a vegetarian, but one of my friends refers to me as a junketarian because I am not a vegetarian for health reasons. I eat a lot of sugar, so I've definitely got a sweet tooth.
Anything in particular? Are you like a tiramisu fan, or?
Cheesecake's probably my favorite, but I'm going to be honest. I'm fat. I'm American. I'm not picky.
I am living that life, sir. I want I'm the pumpkin spice latte of the Magic the Gathering community.
Yeah,
for sure.
yes. Some people go to the gym to get fit. I go to the gym so I could eat more cake.
Awesome. All right, let's spin again.
11.
Number 11. What is the number one thing on your bucket list?
Gosh, I don't actually have one of those. I've kind of live a pretty simple life without anything too spectacular going on. I honestly, it probably would have been kind of doing what I'm doing now. So I'm just on cruise control, basically living it out.
You are living the dream, sir. Not a lot of people could say that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's wild, and I'm very lucky to be where I'm at.
All right, let's give it another roll.
15.
Number 15. What food would you refuse to eat even if someone gave you $500?
Oh gosh. It's probably some kind of sushi. There's a lot of uncooked stuff that seems real terrible.
Okay. See, I'm on the other end. I wouldn't eat cooked seafood. I think it's just the worst, but I love me some sushi. All right. Go ahead and roll. Let's do one more time.
13.
Lucky number 13. Let's see. What is your favorite book series?
That's my favorite book series. It's been a long time since I sat down and read a book. I used to read a lot when I was an adolescent, but it's probably been close to a decade since I really dug into a book series. I'm going to be generic and say Harry Potter.
Okay. Hey,
we were that generation, right? We all grew up on those.
Yeah, absolutely. I was weird. I grew up on Stephen King, and that's probably that's why I'm a weirdo. No. All right, sir. You survived Face the D20. Any upcoming projects you could spoil or tease?
Pretty much everything I have is out there. I guess I would like to plug my website is something that people may or may not know about. It's very complicated. It's jeffhoagland.com. And not only can you find all of my past streams and stuff up there, but I also have a deck list page that has, I think close to 60 modern deck lists on there. And those are updated deck lists that are the latest iteration that I've played. And then there's a description of them and then an embedded YouTube playlist with a minimum of 10 to, I don't know, there's even 50 or 60 matches with some of those decks up there if you want to see them played out.
Any chances of going back and playing some paper competitive?
So I've played 2 opens this year. I top 8'd the Modern Open at the beginning of the year in Indianapolis, which qualified me for the Invitational. So I'm actually the stream hit. I set a donation goal. I was like, I think I might want to go to this tournament. I was like, all right, if folks want to send me, they're going to send me, and I'll be at the Invitational next month. It's 2 months in December, and then this standard format is really good. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but I might go to a Grand Prix for the first time in probably 2 or 3 years. Milwaukee is next month, and I might show up there. It's only like a 3-hour drive from my house, and I really want to play this format.
Awesome. I don't know why I don't know this about you, but do you ever do the whole, the mecca of now what they're called Magic Fests? Do you have any plans to go into like GP Vegas or anything?
No, I often refer to those weekends as just like setting a pile of money on fire, especially because streaming's this really weird thing where not only do I love it, but it's unique in the job sense where that just literally the more I work, the more, money I make, because just like the more time you're live, the more subscribers you get, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of tough to like cut time from streaming Magic to go like play Magic at a weekend like that.
Sure, absolutely. Hey, for someone that lived in that desert, that cesspool for 22 years, you're not missing much. But I mean, feel free to come up to. I'm in Seattle now. Feel free to come to GP Seattle.
Okay.
It's nice up here. Sir, where can everyone find you? You mentioned the website, but social medias, plug away, sir.
I keep things simple. I am just at Jeff Hoagland everywhere. Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, my website.com. Very, very simple to find me. You'll see my wonderful Jester icon.
It is. It absolutely is, in which you can see on this thumbnail for this very video. And before I let you go, I'd be remiss not to tell everyone to go to cardsphere.com. Once again, it really is the best place online to buy, sell, trade all your Paper Magic the Gathering cards. Jeff thinks so too, right?
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Absolutely. Best swag in town also. You can find me on this very channel, John Dunning. That's not my channel name. It's They Said, We Said. But you can find me on Twitter and Reddit at Orzhov Dunn. You could also find me Facebook, Instagram, all that jazz. But until next time, really, thank you so much for planeswalking in, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. It's been a good time.
Awesome. So, Planeswalkers, we'll see you all next time in the multiverse.